So this digitisation project is a collaboration between the Viscount De Vesci, to whom the Ivo De Vesci Photographic collection belongs, and Laois Local Studies, which is the section of the library service that deals with local history and heritage, specifically Laois history and heritage. So we're delighted to have the Viscount De Vesci here with us tonight, and we're all looking forward to his talk on Lady Emma at 7 o'clock. This event is taking place during Heritage Week to highlight the important role played by the Heritage Council in financing and making possible projects like this. I'd also like to acknowledge the important contribution of Catherine Casey, who I don't think is here yet. Catherine is the Laois Heritage Officer, and she played a fairly important part in initiating this project. So I'd like to start by providing just a bit of background information on the collection and its creator. So the collection consists of about 4,000 photographic negatives captured by Ivo, 5th Viscount De Vesci, between about 1900, early 1900s, up to 1957. So Ivo was born in 1881, and he succeeded his uncle John, 4th Viscount De Vesci, in 1903. Ivo's best known locally, of course, here in Abbeyleix, for establishing the Abbeyleix carpet factory in 1904. Although we should mention that his aunt Evelyn also played a fairly important role in the establishment of that particular venture. The carpet factory provided employment for young women in the area in a period of high emigration, and that was one of the aims of the factory. It supplied good quality deep pile carpets to many of the big houses in England, Ireland and Scotland. Would have also been exported to America and Canada. Now, Abbeyleix carpet was purchased by the White Star Line for its ships, and I think it's probably one of the best known historical facts in Abbeyleix that it was used on the Titanic, but it was also used for the coronation of George V, which in a way is just as big a deal, really. No, sorry. No, it's going, sorry, give me a second now. Just going all the wrong way, the whole way through it, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be going backwards. Yeah, sorry. So I suppose that's the thing that Ivo is certainly in the community here is best remembered for would have been the Abbeyleix carpet, the world famous Abbeyleix carpet. He did also serve in the First World War as the gone again, I'm sorry. Yeah, as the lieutenant of Queen's County, and he would have seen action. He was married twice. Firstly to, we have it all there, sorry now. Yeah, so he married twice, firstly to Georgina Wellesley, and secondly to Frances Laois Parsons, who was a widow of the 5th Earl of Ross. Ivo, from the collection, you can tell that he was clearly a passionate and prolific photographer, and he visually recorded all aspects of his life, including family, society, foreign travel, and also estate management. I think it's interesting that Ivo was related to the Parsons family in Birr by his second marriage. As you probably know, the Parsons family are famous for their scientific genius. They'd be best known, I suppose, for the giant telescope, which was the largest in the world, I think, until about 1917, which is pretty impressive considering they designed and built it back in 1845. But the next generation invented the steam turbine. But I suppose what I'm interested in is that many family members also played an important role in the development of photography. Mary Field, who was later Mary Parsons, Countess of Ross, she was married to William Parsons, the third Earl of Ross, who's the man who designed the telescope, and she was particularly important in the development of photographic technology. You probably already know that there's an amazing science museum over in Birr, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who has an interest in well, science in general and astronomy. But if you've any interest in the history of photography in Ireland and worldwide, there's a fantastic exhibition over there that you should check out. So sadly, Ivo died in 1958 following a car accident. He died without a direct heir and was succeeded by his nephew, John Eustace Vesci, the 6th Viscount De Vesci and father of Tom. And this is how Tom came to own this particular collection. So, yes. So, last year, Tom discovered a quantity of undeveloped photographic negatives belonging to Ivo and approached the Laois Heritage Office with a view to having them digitised. Catherine Casey proposed a plan to allow Laois Local Studies to digitise the material, retaining a copy for the Local Studies Digital Archive and returning the collection to Tom with a digital copy for his own family collection. It was agreed that Tom would retain, obviously, custody and ownership of the original negatives, but also copyright ownership of all the images. But he would allow Laois Local Studies to make the collection available to the public for research purposes. So before proceeding any further with our project, we engaged a photographic conservator to survey the collection and to get a sense of its condition and how we should best approach digitisation. The conservator produced a report which contained two key points, I suppose, in us being able to proceed and secure funding for the project. So the first was that given their age, the negatives had actually deteriorated very little. And so we could expect reasonably good positive images on digitisation. So that was the first thing we wanted to know. Would we get any images? One of the reasons why they had deteriorated very little was actually because Ivo was clearly quite a meticulous person, and he had stored them. He'd stored them well, and then I think possibly on the estate for a long time they were out in an outbuilding, were they?
They're in an attic.
In an attic, yeah. So yeah. So yeah, was that in the house or in an attic in an outbuilding?
It was a very cool area.
Oh yeah, so that would
by pure luck, that was a very good environment.
Yeah. There was a bit of luck in that, but that would have made a big difference. The fact that they were stored in kind of a cold, stable environment. Then the second thing is that the collection, the type of negatives they are, and we'll talk a little bit about it later. The one thing is that they will deteriorate, even though they have deteriorated slowly. That's something that's going to last. So, in many cases, the negatives, in the case of some of the technologies, they will actually deteriorate very quickly. So digitisation is important to preserve the images for the future. So they are in good condition, but they are already starting to deteriorate. And luckily, we intervened just on time, really, because they won't stay in the condition they're in now. So, yeah, did that. Sorry, folks. So the Heritage Council agreed to fund the digitisation project because of the many heritage benefits to the public. So firstly, sorry, I did actually go on too far. So the first thing is that digitisation would create positive images of an historically important collection never seen before. So that's the first big thing. I mean, there's 7,000 negatives, and they're all relate to sort of local history in some way or the other. So to be able to even make the images available is very important. So secondly, by allowing Laois Local Studies to retain a digital copy of the collection, the images would be accessible to the general public, although the collection remained in private custody. And I suppose in local studies and in a lot of libraries and archives now, digitisation, it is a big thing, but one of the advantages of it is that instead of asking people to donate, we'll say family archives or papers, that you can say to them, okay, can we digitise them and then you can retain them, because people don't always want to hand collections over. But at the same time, it means that you then have the digital copy, which you can make available to the public. You know, there might be copyright, some copyright controls, but it's opening it up, and not just locally. Once something is digitised, you know, you can send it anywhere in the world. So the Heritage Council quite like that. And then thirdly, and I suppose as an archivist, probably the most important part to me is that by creating 2 digital copies of the collection stored in separate locations, so one in local studies and one in Tom's custody, this ensures the long-term preservation of the images. So in other words, should anything happen to the original negatives, and given enough time, they will deteriorate. But also, I suppose because of climate change, we now are more likely to experience things like fire and flood, and so if the original images were lost in that scenario, we would have the digital copies to generate new images for future generations. And this is something, I suppose, in every aspect of life, whether it's agriculture or transport, everybody now has to think in terms of climate change. But I suppose for people who are taking care of heritage and cultural collections, it's exactly the same, and they are often very much a threat, and problems are arising very quickly. So we have to build this kind of thing into our funding as well. So as previously mentioned, the collection contains about 4,000 negatives captured over 5 decades, which is pretty amazing, because a lot changed in Ireland from the 1900s to the 1950s. The negatives consist, actually I'm just going to stand out here so I can see this. So the negatives consist of about 250 glass plates. There's 3,000 negatives on cellulose nitrate film, which would have been in use from about the 1900s to the 1940s. And then finally, there's about 750 negatives on cellulose acetate film, which is similar to the previous one, but safer for reasons we'll explain later. So I'm going to just talk about the glass plates first of all. I don't have any of them with me because they're not the kind of thing that you pass around. The glass plates in the Ivo De Vesci collection are they're gelatin dry plates, which would have been introduced around the 1870s and used widely up to about the 1920s. So glass plates were actually in use from about the 1850s, but the earlier ones were what was known as wet collodion plates, and these were far less user-friendly. So I don't know how interested people are in the technical stuff, but I'm just to give you a bit of a background as to the importance of the 2 different types. With the wet collodion process, which was introduced by Frederick Scott Archer in 1851, the glass plate had to be prepared just before exposure and developed immediately afterwards. So that was pretty limiting. The collodion had to be spread carefully over the entire glass plate, and then the plate, when it was sensitised, had to be exposed and developed while it was still wet. So if you have to do all of that and take your photograph in the middle of it, you're very limited in where you can use it and in what situation. Whereas the gelatin dry plates, which Ivo would have used, these were introduced back in 1870-71 by a man by the name of R.L. Maddox. These were glass plates coated with a gelatin emulsion of silver bromide, and these could be prepared in advance and stored until exposure. So following exposure, they could be brought back to a darkroom for development at leisure. So if you think about it, this really revolutionised photography. I mean, glass plates sound, very impractical to us, but it meant, because they were prepared in advance and they could be developed later, that people could go, they could take them out, they could bring them places. It was just a lot more mobility in it. So I suppose from the time that the dry glass plates were introduced, you'll notice that there would have been a big increase in the use of photography in things like agriculture and even news coverage and stuff like that, where people could bring it out on the road. Whereas before that, you really, if there were photographs taken outside, it was a very staged, slow process. And you'll see that in some of the earlier outdoor photographs of things like evictions and that look like it's all happening, but it all would have had to, not that there weren't evictions, but it would have all had to have been staged with the wet Pallodian plates, which I'm sure nobody's interested in, so I'll move on from that now. I just find it interesting. So the glass plates, whether they're the wet or the dry, they're heavy and fragile, and this makes them prone to, no, I'm still on glass plates, yeah. This makes them prone to breakage, chipping, fractures, and even the emulsion flaking, and I'll try and point that out a little bit in some of the slides later. However, Ivo stored the glass plates in specially designed wooden boxes, so although there was some damage and there were some broken and cracked plates, overall they were in reasonably good condition. So despite that, over time, even in boxes, a certain amount of kind of dirt, dust, cobwebs, spiders can get into anything. I found dead spiders in the boxes, that's how I know. So at the suggestion of the photographic conservator, the glass side of the plates were gently and very carefully cleaned before we had them digitized. So I might have an image of that somewhere. So it was a very slow process, because you had to literally just deionized water, that's all you can use, because there's so many layers of chemicals on the other side that if even the water got on the other side, it would be a big problem, never mind any kind of detergents or anything like that. So it took a bit of time, but the difference that it made to the images was amazing. So then the cellulose nitrate and acetate negative. So given the decades in which Ivo engaged in photography, it's not surprising that the bulk of his negatives were on cellulose nitrate film. So again, at the time, cellulose nitrate, it would have really made a huge difference. It would have been the very new shiny thing, because of like the weight. Like cellulose nitrate, obviously, it's like a plastic, so it weighed nothing in comparison with the glass plates. It wasn't breakable, so there was great, I suppose, great leaps forward in photography when it became available. And I suppose it became popular in the early 1900s. With all these technologies, there's always an overlap, and depending on where you are in the world, but certainly in Ireland it would have become popular in the 1900s. But the nitrate base is chemically unstable and deteriorates quite quickly. So cellulose nitrate film is also highly flammable and is known to combust in certain conditions. So that's why I have the Cinema Paradiso poster here. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but the famous scene where the whole thing goes up. that's cellulose nitrate. Now, in fairness, it's cellulose nitrate cine film as opposed to photographic film, which was way more likely to sort of instantaneously combust. Like in the 1940s, 30s and 40s in Ireland, a lot of cinemas burnt down as well. If you were to go back through old newspaper archives, you'll see that like it actually was, the Cinema Paradiso thing was, it was quite common. So that's a problem, and it was a bit of a concern when we discovered that so much, when the photographic conservator confirmed that there was so much cellulose nitrate film in the collection, especially as it was in Tom's house at the time. So yeah, so it caused so many fires that the manufacture of this type of film, it was eventually discontinued, I think, around 1950, 1951, and it was replaced by cellulose acetate, which for obvious reasons became known as safety film, as opposed to the combustible film. I mean, most film is combustible, but not instantaneously combustible. So safety film was in use from about the 1940s. It was certainly introduced in the 1940s, but it came into, I suppose, general use in the 1950s. So a lot of Ivo's later photographs were captured on this safety film, but that only really constitutes about 750 photographs out of a collection of 4,000. So the digitisation of the collection will be completed in the coming weeks, which is great. The next stage of the project will involve compiling as much information as possible about the subject of the images. Fortunately, Ivo was quite meticulous, and he did keep indexes of the photographs in a lot of cases. So that just makes a photographic collection so much more, I suppose, valuable for research and even for pleasure, just to have as much information as possible. We're also hoping that maybe Tom will be able to fill in some of the blanks, especially in relation to some of the people and the places. And of course, you know, in the library service being researchers, we will do our own investigation as well, to try and find out a little bit more about the images. So the collection will be added to, skip that, sorry. The collection is going to be added to the Laois Local Studies Digital Archive, and it will be available to view in the Local Studies Research Room. As I mentioned earlier, we won't own copyright, but it will be made available for research. We also hope that some of the collection, particularly the stuff relating to the locality, that we might exhibit that on the Laois Local Studies website at some point. Now, just, what way are we for time? Oh, great, that's okay. I'm just going to go through some of the images. So the first few here are actually from the glass plates. Now, I'll have to just admit straight up that I don't have the proportion correct on these, because I took the digital image and just made it fit the screen. So in some situations it might look slightly out of proportion. That wasn't Ivo's mistake, that was mine. But you can see here, on the glass plates, just the images. And again, you can't see it as much here, but in the images that we would have, when you blow them up, the detail on glass plates, it's very, very fine detail. Better than we'd be used to even nowadays. And I read something recently as well that said that in the kind of I suppose, the fine art end of photography, you now have photographers going back to these processes and actually using things like glass plates and these technologies to create, I suppose, art really in the photographic world. Now you can see some of the damage that I would have referred to earlier. You can see here around the edges where you have bits have been, in some cases, bits of the glass have chipped away. The edges of glass plates tend to be quite rough and they do get damaged as well. And there are some, slight scratches, and not so much on this one now, but you might see it on some of the others. I don't know, I know that on Ivo's index, he kind of says things like group sitting, and he'll say where it is around the house or whatever, but I'd be hoping maybe you might recognise some of these.
I know two of the people, and one would have been Ivo's mother, who is the one in the centre, I think.
Oh, really?
I think that's, she married again, she was widowed very early on when Ivo was a small boy, and he had two younger brothers who were very small when she was widowed, and she was fortunate in that she married again to a very nice, and with the added bonus of very rich.
Yeah, it's
man,
the dream.
Mr. Portman, who happened to own, or his father owned a big chunk of London, or Portman Square, all that.
Oh yes, yeah.
And Mr. Portman would have succeeded his father, but he died before his father.
Oh.
And he was extremely nice, and they had a property down in Somerset, and commissioned this wonderful garden by Lutyens, the same guy who commissioned the Baron of Kew garden. And I think that's Ivo's mother.
So that's
then Mrs. Portman, I think.
This lady here.
And I think the one on the right is one of Ivo's younger brother, Osbert, I think.
This guy here.
I think so.
Yeah.
Struggling with the other ones. But we might
This girl here, you'll see, she appears in another photograph. This is a chapel, but I think it's somewhere.
This is going to be so interesting for other bodies to research, and the Hestercombe, that Lutyens gallery.
Yeah.
They have a great board of conservators and restorers, and their archivist has been here, and he was longing to find pictures of exactly this, because this whole chapel got moved.
Oh, really?
To another position, and he was longing to find pictures of it. So
that's great.
It's going to be really important.
Yeah.
I'll be able to send that to him.
Yeah.
And he'll be thrilled.
Yeah, that's good to know. Just another one here again. Again, on my computer and work, I could go in and enlarge it, and like really the detail is very, very good. If you consider how old these glass plates were. This is an interesting picture because it's clearly, I'd say, tenants, but I don't think they're De Vesci tenants. On the index, the little note was Laud and family, and I looked them up in various Irish records. I looked for them in 1901 and 1911 census, because that's the kind of the era.
I think it's Hestercombe again.
That's what yeah.
And when he was young, he would have spent time with his father's
Yeah.
And Mr. Portman was a really close stepfather, and his mother. He would have spent a lot of time with them.
Yeah. So there will be probably a lot of images from this place as well. Yeah, that's great. But I think that's a really nice picture. And again, because we have scanned them in fairly high resolution, you can actually go right in and see the faces and that. Again, you can see here, maybe not so much on the edge, I might have cut it back a bit too much, but there are a few little sort of spots and that kind of thing from age. But overall, the images are like excellent. Here's another one of that lady that you just spoke of, in a similar position. No idea who this is. This man, the name is given in initials.
He would have been a British Army. You can see his regiment from his. You've identified that he was a grenadier. He was in the Grenadiers.
Yeah. I did try and zoom in and look at things like. I mean, I have no great knowledge of the history of uniforms and that, but I know other people will probably be able to tell from the detail on the buttons and the medals and that.
He was a grenadier. I can tell that, and he was a sergeant. You can tell by the stripes on his arm.
Okay, more than I knew.
And he was probably told to stand there while I take a picture.
Yeah. It's a good picture though. And again, you can see here where even though the edges are damaged, the image is still incredibly good quality.
You'd wonder whether he made it through the First World War. I'm not sure what date they were. It was so many of those.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing about images like this. As soon as I see an image like this, if I can find out who it is, you can go and check an awful lot of that kind of information. Now you can follow up, you know, like some of these images would be great. They'd be a great starting point for maybe secondary school history projects.
So many projects between our two talks this evening.
Yeah. I better hurry up because I have to be finished by 7. Oh, sorry. That's that other girl who was in that group picture at the end.
Wife.
Oh, really?
The first one.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah, she was beautiful.
I don't know what went wrong. It was a very short-lived marriage. Something clearly went wrong.
Yeah.
She's gorgeous looking.
Yeah, she's beautiful, really
looking,
beautiful.
And always dresses, you know, the pictures of her, she looks amazingly dressed. And
she does.
She looks fun. She seems to be smiling in the pictures. But
yeah.
I don't know what went wrong, but something did.
Anyway, sure. These things happen. So this is the house, isn't it?
That's really interesting. It's the drawing room of Abbeyleix house, and one of the people I'm going to be talking about later on is that centre picture in the far wall. He's a Russian field marshal and a prince.
That's this one
that
here.
One, and I'm going to be talking about him later
great.
on. And the picture over the door is actually there's a copy of that in Heritage House. That's the second Viscount.
Oh, right, okay.
I had the picture copied for Heritage House because he was so important. He was the guy who built the town, basically.
Oh, right, okay.
And the Abbeyleix carpets would have been on the, actually, funny enough, not on the floor yet. So that's interesting because all the carpets for that room were made in the Abbeyleix carpet factory, but this clearly predates that. So
that's possibly earlier than 1904 then. Now it might have taken a while for them to be manufactured and that, but so it's actually an earlier one than I thought. I think maybe Ivo, he was into photography and he embraced the new technologies as they came out. Oh, sorry. So that's, I suppose, the billiards room, is it?
That's the billiard room, and it's really interesting. You can identify pieces of furniture. That room no longer exists. It was changed. The interior of the big house was swapped around.
Oh.
I think Sir David made that into a sort of family room, and I think I'm not sure what it is now.
Yeah, you can see in this one like the damage. I don't know how well you can see that screen. Can you see kind of the damage around the edges? But again, apart from maybe some spots and very slight sort of scratches on the emulsion side, the images are really quite clear. That's another one, of course, of the house.
That's the Somerset.
Oh, that's the other house.
That's the one in Somerset.
Okay,
where Mrs. Portman lived.
Right, okay. I didn't know that now. That's interesting. So this house then...
This is Abbeyleix. It's the terrace side of Abbeyleix.
Yeah.
And the central figure in black is Lady Ivo De Vesci.
That was the aunt, was it, of Ivo?
That was his aunt. That was the widow of the 4th Viscount. This building we're in now was redone in commemoration of the 4th Viscount.
Yeah.
And that would have been people staying in Abbeyleix, out posing for a picture on a sunny day.
I think this is the same. Are these the same two young guys that are in the earlier?
Brothers probably, yeah.
Okay.
The one on the higher step is probably Tom, my grandfather, and Osbert, the one below him, I think.
Yeah. You don't know who this very bored girl is here, do you? I love that. It just
wasn't into it.
No, it's such a family photograph because there's always one person who just doesn't want to be there, and she is that person. It's a great. The more you zoom in on that, the better her expression is. It's really funny, and is that Ivo's mother again?
It looks like that, and I'm not sure. Who the rather ferocious lady looks like she's about to give you a whack with her umbrella.
Yeah. And then this is in England again.
That's Eton College.
All right, yeah, okay. So you see, these are the only images from the collection I've kind of looked at yet.
So 3,998.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. You can see here on this one there is a bit more damage around the edges and things like that. Like that's like a mark on the glass plate. I would have cleaned the glass side only, not obviously the emulsion side. So I could see the ones that were going to be a bit rougher, but still the images are still quite good. This is a good one as well. I don't suppose you know where that was taken.
No, it's interesting because there's mixed races in that.
Yeah.
And given the date, I mean that is, and the awful prejudice and racial separation there was, which is shocking. It's interesting. There's a mixture there.
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting one. We'll have to research that one a bit more. Again, you have a nice.
That's Mr. Portman, the stepfather.
Yeah.
And that's my grandfather between his knees.
All right. Okay.
And Osbert on the right. Tom was clearly a lot more fun than Osbert.
Yeah. Well, he looks pretty happy there. All right. I love the way as well. You always have the dogs in. When you look, you can see here on this glass plate where there's actually a section of it is broken off. We've kept anything that was broken. We have kept. Just to give back to you what you're going to do with them, I don't know, but they'll be there if ever there's a technology to.
I have Tom's diary that would have been written about that time, at that age of about 12 or 13.
Oh, really?
And on his diary, he wrote little notes: smoked pipe. Smoked cigar. And he was about 12 or 13. Smoked pipe and cigar.
Wow, that's pretty. Yeah, I'd say he wasn't too well after that. So that was the selection from the glass plates. Then the acetate images that we've gotten back so far. You can see here where I've obviously messed up the proportion. The original is better than that. Some of these are quite faded. You can see. Or kind of overexposed maybe. Now that could be something we could improve once we have them scanned. We can probably improve things like that. This is all Abbeyleix, yeah.
But interesting because the word changes, over the years. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like.
The Collisons will be interested to see these because
the history, because I suppose on any estate from the very beginning, it's always changing, isn't it? That's the thing. So maps would have recorded a lot of the changes originally, but then the photographs are great for things like the houses and that kind of detail.
This is actually reversed, this one. It's back to front.
Oh.
That's, I think there was a note under that with some French expression I wasn't familiar with. It looks as though someone had a family member had just been buried there. And those are the flowers over the grave.
I think it might have said something about Evelyn. It was something in French, and Evelyn was mentioned. So
yes,
would she have been buried there?
She didn't die till quite a lot later.
Oh.
She lived on into the 30s, I think.
Well,
Late 30s.
Well, these are.
They might have been flowers from her to another. Could it have been her husband?
Yeah. Now these acetate negatives. These are later, so it could be from the 30s. It could be anything from the 20s to the 50s with these. I don't think there was a date on that one though.
Have to do a bit of research.
Yeah, definitely.
But all the vegetation has now been removed from the old church.
Yeah.
Again, Catherine Casey's help and grants, and not just Catherine Casey, but the various different bodies that provide these grants. And I'll be acknowledging them in what I have to say. But they're so important because they've given us such benefits in the county.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't notice and acknowledge the different bodies behind the things we can do, like what you're doing now.
Yeah, and I mean, projects like these, it's going on, like we'll say with the Heritage Council, they're funding these small projects all over the country every year. Nobody gets a huge amount of money, but there's enough there for things to be done every year and built up. So it's important. Sorry, I love this photograph. This is, I suppose, an early plough, mechanical plough of some kind. Is it?
It looks like that. I'm trying to identify the place and struggling. I think, and other people might correct me, I think the character on the right could be Captain Fitzherbert.
The agent, yeah. I did wonder who he was. It did occur to me maybe an agent. He didn't look like he was a member of the family, but he's obviously...
He looks pretty bossy.
He does, yeah. He looks in charge, and he doesn't look like his boots let him water. But it is a great photograph, and I'm hoping that there'll be more of these ones from, the estate as well, in the other photographs. So again, that's the house again, isn't it?
Squashed.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. That's just, I regret doing that, but anyway, I had to do it very quickly today. But again, you can see, unfortunately, even in the acetate, they do get scratched and that as well. That's... is that?
That's the bridge over the Nore.
Yeah.
That is an fascinating bridge. It's being restored by the Collisons now, because half of it fed into the river during Sir David's time.
That's the one they're restoring, yeah, okay.
Well, they're restoring both, actually, that and the Monk's Bridge. But that bridge was always called the Wooden Bridge. It's made clearly of stone, and it's an old bridge. And why it's called the Wooden Bridge has always been a bit of a conundrum. There was an earlier bridge a long, long time ago made of wood. We're going back to 17-something then.
Yeah.
But it was also would have been the bridge over which they carried the wood to the sawmill.
Oh, maybe that's...
So maybe that is something.
Yeah, that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
But it's called the Wooden Bridge, just to confuse everybody.
Yeah. Again, this is an example of one I destroyed because the horse looks like he's about 25 feet long. But again, it's a great photograph. I don't think it's the estate here, is it?
No, again, it looks very England.
Yeah.
Brickwork.
Yeah, it does. But it's a great picture. And one of my favourite portrait of the entire collection.
And that's outside Abbeyleix house.
Yes, that's the same. I think that's the same dog that's in the earlier pictures. He's lovely. Hard to know who these people are.
I have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
I recognise it's on the terrace in Abbeyleix.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. So it could be it could be visitors, or it could be local. It could be local people. Maybe.
Interesting shaped dog, that.
Yeah, it's a big. Yeah. I don't suppose anyone else recognises these people, do they? From their own families, or no. This is a nice picture, but not that clear, actually, surprisingly. If this had been taken with a glass plate, we probably would have been able to zoom in on the faces because the detail is so fine. But it's a nice kind of casual picture on the estate again, I would say, is it?
I'm not sure it's here. I think it's somewhere else.
Yeah.
He was very interested in conifers, so he would have gone to parks and places.
Yeah.
Like that as well.
So you think maybe the trees could have been the focus of this photograph rather than the people?
Well, he would have gone to visit.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
so, yeah. Yeah. Do you know who this man is?
I think he was a Portman relative, but I'm not sure. There was one who was kind of a bit flash and spivvy.
Yeah,
looks a bit like
that could be him, all right. Yeah, yeah. It's a good. I think his initials are given in the index, but I'm not sure we have the full name. But we'll do a bit of research on him.
I'm not sure you'd lend him a fiver.
Yeah, yeah.
You might not get it back.
Is that anybody that you recognise?
I think it could be Lord Ross's younger brother, who died about 10 years ago.
Oh.
Martin Parsons. I'm not 100% sure.
There are a few colour photographs in the collection, not too many, but that's an example of one. So we included it here.
Then when did colour start?
Oh, don't know. You'd have to.
Anyway, we'll
yeah.
research
Photography is one of those tricky things because you have different technologies being invented by enthusiastic amateurs and scientists all over the world kind of simultaneously, which is why even when I'm talking about certain technologies, I would usually say introduced by such a person, because if you said invented, you really couldn't stand over it, because they were often being invented in different places at the same time. And so depending on where you were in the world, if you were in Germany, we'll say in the 1850s, you might have been looking at daguerreotypes, whereas if you were, you know, maybe in England, you might have been using a different technology. It depended, they all had their advantages. It wasn't a case of this one was absolutely better than the last one. It might be just that, you know, this one was really clear, but you could only use the negative once, whereas this one was slightly less clear, maybe a little bit cheaper to produce, and you could use the negative more than once, you know. So it's very, very hard sometimes to date photography, and I'm certainly not an expert of any kind. That's another one that I think that face appears somewhere else in the collection. I wasn't really able to, when I tried to go in and see what was going on here in the background, the image wasn't as clear as I hoped, but there's obviously something going on. It could have been on the side of a sports field, or maybe an army camp, or I don't know. But it's kind of, it's an informal sort of a photograph. It's a good picture. And then back to the military photographs. That one, would that be, you don't know? See, now, obviously they mean nothing to me, but in the index where there are initials, you might know from the initials in the way I'd know from my family's initials, you know. Yeah. It's another great.
That's Robin Hood and Maid Marian.
It's a good picture as well. So you can see even from, like, we'll say 50 out of 4,000 images from the collection, there is great variety in it. I think there probably are a lot of photographs of trees. But that's important too. I mean, we're looking at this collection from the point of view of, say, maybe kind of local history, or some people are interested in the social history. But the great thing about photographic archives is that some people, it depends on what you're looking for. Like, we'll say the image of the parlour earlier, like for set designers and you know, filmmakers and that, like an image like that is kind of important to be able to recreate the detail. Whereas, you know, to you might be just look like the same picture of the same tree 10 times over, but to somebody who's actually, we'll say, into trees and understands trees and is into documenting and recording, I suppose, when trees were introduced on different estates, and that's like very important, you know. So I'm sure who doesn't like trees, but mind you, the black and white photograph of the tree doesn't have quite the same charm, but it has you know, they are detailed, and they will be important to somebody. That's the great thing about the archives, is you just don't know who's going to come looking for what, you know. So you just have to make it all available. That's, I think, is that the same man again? Yeah. It's a nice picture. I don't know if you know who they are. Yeah, and you can see, you know, like I was saying, you know, for like fashion historians and, you know, even textile historians, and I mean, obviously, in that one it's not that obvious, but in say the glass plates, you can zoom in. The detail is so refined that you could actually even look at the textile, you know, and draw conclusions. So it's great. This, I believe, is Ivo and his mother.
Yes.
Because he has that written. There's no ambiguity. It's myself and mother. But it is a great picture, I think. Oh, sorry. there it is, yeah. Would that have been taken in Abbeyleix, do you think? Or?
I think that would have been at Hestigum, Somerset.
Yeah, yeah. I think that could be. I think that some of them are dated as well. I think that could be like 1930s or 40s or something like that. Would she still have been alive, do you think?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think she died in the 30s.
All right, okay. So that's,
no, actually even later, I think.
yeah.
No, hang on, she died in 1951.
Okay, yeah. God, she lived nearly as long as he did. Yeah.
And my elder sister Emma overlapped with her because I think she died in May 1951, and my elder sister was born in March 51. Because I was researching it recently, and I must tell my sister that she did overlap just.
Yeah.
With her great grandmother.
Oh, it's nice to know. This is one of he just came across I think that in the index it was something like motor smash or something he has described as. Again, I've destroyed the image with the proportions, but it's a great picture. And again, you know, like for people who are into the history of cars and stuff like that, these are great pictures. Cars don't interest me, but they interest an awful lot of people, and they're always looking for the images. It's kind of a sad one, considering he died as a result of a car accident himself. Now this is definitely England, or it's one of his travel shots anyway. He just seemed to have travelled quite a bit. Now the name of this place is given, I just can't remember it because I can't remember things, but it does actually say where this is, and it doesn't look very English, but I think it is in England somewhere. It's definitely, the information is recorded anyway. This is that big house in England, Attingham, is it? I think the National Trust have it now. But trying to figure out the connection between the two families. I started researching that during the week.
I think it was in Shropshire.
Yeah.
In England, and that just the locality would have made a connection because they had an estate. Ivo had an estate in Shropshire.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because when I was trying to research this, when I put in, say, Ivo's name, there was another Ivo De Vesci, but we were talking back in like the 1400s or something like that, and it was in this area as well. So there was definitely some kind of, yeah, I knew there was some sort of family connection, but that's interesting now. So he had an estate in Shropshire, but this wasn't it.
No,
but there might have been a family connection.
With neighbouring
yeah.
families.
This is. He seems to have travelled quite a bit. So there are these shots like this. This is a good example of how much easier it became to take photographs when you moved, well, first to the dry plates, but then obviously when they had the acetate film, kind of these casual, informal photographs became much more common in collections. This, again, it says, this is in Ireland, I think. I can't remember where it is. I think it could be somewhere down in Kerry. It says it on the index anyway. I think everybody recognises that as the Rock of Cashel. It's in the index. So he seems to have travelled to, like he travelled abroad, but he travelled around Ireland as well. Possibly the trees would have brought him to different places as well if he had that interest. There was another image, and you know what?
That's the Blackwater in Fermoy.
That's right. It says that in the index. Yeah. So that's kind of. Oh, I've got a minute over. So yeah, that's the end of the talk on the digitisation project. But you might keep an eye maybe on the Laois Local Studies website because we will advertise when we're putting up some information on the collection when it's finalised, when it's fully digitised. We'll just probably put up a selection, exhibit a selection online with Tom's agreement, but it'll probably be a few months from now. So just to say again, before I hand over to Tom, for anyone who came in after I started, this is being recorded. Just want to let you know that, and that we're having refreshments after the end.